Good afternoon. I'm very excited to have the lovely Trevor with me today. Hiya, Trevor. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, Donna. Thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this for a while. My name's Trevor Belshaw, T.A. Belshaw, author name, also known as Trevor Forrest when I write for kids. I'm as old as the hills now. I've been writing for about 14 years. The first 15 books I wrote were all for children. And then I did a switch, something happened in my life, and I did a switch and wrote a couple of short novellas for adults, which went down quite well. And then I had a 5-year break and came back to it in 2020 with my Unspoken trilogy, followed up by A Christmas Story with the same characters, and then 2 1939 murder mysteries with a couple of the characters from those books as well. So, and they've gone down quite well. So I'm quite pleased with all that.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
Pretty much. I never stopped reading when I was a kid. From when I could first string a few words together, I'd read anything from Joss William books, Enid Blyton, anything like that. The back of cornflakes packets when I was eating my breakfast sort of thing, like, I'd even do that. I remember reading about periods once in my mother's Woman's Own magazine, because it was like, it was in there and it was something to read. None of it sunk in. I had no idea. I still didn't realise when I grew up what it was all about. But yes, that was a sort of object lesson, turning around to your mother and saying, what's that? I had my first go at writing when I was about 9, and wrote a few short stories. I was always getting good marks in English and composition and what have you at school. And I was fixated about writing about spaceships being attacked by these giant space octopuses and sucking the life out of the system and stuff like that. So that's how I started. And I always dreamed of actually having seen a book in a shop one day. And I was never sure it was ever going to happen, but that sort of stayed with me.
So what made you sit down one day and think, okay, today's the day I'm going to finally write my first book?
It was having the time to do it. It's as simple as that, really. I always wanted to do it. I used to work away from home. Well, family got in the way, family life as it does. You're bringing your kids up, you've got to work all the time. You don't get, you're just tired at night time when you come home. Then to earn a bit more money, I started working away for a few years. And while I was doing that, I was stuck in a hotel room at night, and I was working ideas out of my head, jotting a few notes down, thinking, oh, when I get the time, I would definitely write this. But the time never came. It really didn't. And it wasn't until 2008-9 when the crash hit. And I'd run in a one-man band computer repair business. And I went from having 30 jobs on the wall to none in the space of a few months. So much time on my hands, and my age, I was struggling to get another job. And when I did get one, it was a part-time one. So I did have time then. So that was the time I thought, Dorian used to work. So I'd come home finishing work at 1 o'clock, sit down in front of the computer, and just the dogs and the cats for company, and that was it. So I thought, I've got the time now. So I did start then. That's when I started. The Magic Molly books, the kids' books, were the first ones I did, that little witch who couldn't control a wonky wand. So yeah, that was it. And I used to read them to the dogs, and when they didn't complain about it, I thought, that's pretty good. I think I've cracked it here. As I say, I was part of this online writers group I've joined called Write Link, and met my editor there, Maureen Vincent Northern. She still edits all my books now. And I've got so much advice from people about the writing craft, and it is a craft, it is an art. So a lot of people think they can just go into it and, I'm going to, that's the thing you hear all the time as an author. When somebody finds out you're an author, it's like, apart from asking you, how many books have you sold this week? Why can't I find it in the chart, sort of thing? The next thing is, oh yeah, I'm going to write one day as well, so, and you do get that all the time. So to be able to say that I've done it, it's, and I think I mentioned it to you just before, when you realise that 99% of the world's population have never done it, it is something to be, quite proud about, and I am.
When you wrote your children's books, I'm guessing that your children were grown up. So did you use stuff that you'd experienced with them as kids, or did you just completely have a random idea and decide to write that?
It's I don't know, but this is not a sort of, I've just got this ability to sort of think back to when honestly I can slip back now to my mind when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and it's like I'm still in there. Like, so I know what interested me then, and I know what sort of thing I'd love to have read then that maybe wasn't about then, sort of thing, like, you know. So I know what I found funny then, the stupid jokes, the daft, the little events that happen maybe off stage, sort of thing, like, you know, on the sidelines and stuff like this. So I was able to slip into that, and that really was, that was the reason I could, the only reason I could do it, because you can't talk down to kids. They know when you're doing that. Everything has to be tied up as well. You can't leave a loose end anywhere. Everything has got to have a final point, you know what I mean, to it, regardless. The book's got to end in the right place. Things have got to happen in the right order. You can't have these little nuances. Well, you can do it, but that's mainly for the parents when they're reading to the kids. You can put a few jokes in there for the adults, sort of thing, like, you know. So yeah, I could do that. And at the same time, with the latter Magic Molly books, when I was on to about book 5 or 6, I started writing the Tracy's Hot Bell one for writing. I was putting up as a serial once a week. And that was a bit strange, because I had to get from being in a 10-year-old kid's mind into Tracy's mind, who was a scatty 18-year-old just starting her first job with delusions of becoming a celebrity, sort of thing, like. So I had to get into her mind and come out of it back into the kids one, like, you know, and then try and get it in his mind in the middle of it to keep my own sort of sanity, sort of thing, like, you know. So that was a good exercise, that, and it's still been good stead for writing the later books, because I can get in. My favourite ever comment that I've got on any of the reviews was Trevor writes like a girl. And when I read that, I thought, yes, that's it. Like, you know, I mean, I've got this right. So I've sort of try and keep that sort of mentality when I'm because most of my books, just all of them actually, I've got strong female leads. The men are a sort of an added issue, sort of thing, like, you know what I mean, on the side, because it's so much more interesting to write on, you know what I mean, from a woman's perspective. One, because I don't have it and I have to try and work out what they would do in a certain situation, or what they would say. So yeah, that's been really interesting.
So you went from the kids' books to the Tracy's books, which I've read, and a complete departure from children's books. And then you went from them to the Unspoken trilogy. Are they wartime as well?
Partly, it's a dual timeline book.
That's right. Yeah.
The whole series, yeah. One half set in 1939, 38, 39, the first one, and the other half in 2020, just before COVID. In fact, COVID comes into the third book of the trilogy, so that's how up to date that is. Yeah, so it did, because although it was Tracy's mad voice that was in my head, and because she, as you know, she's not the brightest knife in the sharpest knife in the drawer, shall we say, but she's got a heart of gold, sort of thing, right, you know. So but no, I did have to move on from a scatterbrain character to more grounded ones for those books. And I think I did it right. I think I got it right. So but no, like as I was saying, I do find it so interesting writing from a female perspective. Much more interesting when something happens, yeah, with a guy, you just, I don't know, he's got tied up or whatever, he's stuck in the corner of a cellar, he's going to find a way. It's brute force and ignorance and get yourself out of the bonds and punch the baddie and get out of there. Women wouldn't do that. They have to find a more nuanced way of getting through troubled situations, and that's what I find and also the attitudes of men back then, and how they would react to what the men were saying to them, because it was a normal everyday thing to be treated like doormats, and that's all they ever were. They couldn't even have a bank account of their own unless the husband had died or something, like, you know, and they got 3 people to sponsor them, and, you know, or whatever. They weren't allowed to checkbook, that's for certain, like, you know, they wouldn't be left in charge of one of those. Yeah, the whole country would have come to its knees if women had been given checkbooks. Yeah, so yes, I did find that. See, I was born in the 1950s, so those attitudes, it was quite soon after the war, 1953. So it's only 8 years after. And they were still fighting in Korea and what have you then. But so those attitudes were still prevalent, and they were like that right through, even in the 60s when the pill came in, into the early 70s. Things started to change then, thankfully. Women were getting better careers. They weren't just sort of like Amy would love to join the police, Amy Rowlands, back in 1930. No, she'd absolutely no chance. And the only job she'd get is sit there typing up an officer's notes, or to be there if a woman was being questioned, a vulnerable woman was being questioned, she could sit there making cups of tea for her, sort of thing, like, while the detective. So, and that really frustrates her. So, and she lets it be known that she's really frustrated by it as well. So, I say, thankfully, things did start changing in the 70s. But it's that question of how they were treated and what their responses would be to all those situations, knowing that they're not allowed to say certain things or not allowed to get angry about the situations and things like this. So, and that just proved quite a challenge to, but like I say, I was born in the 50s, those attitudes were still there when I was growing up. Men thought they ruled the house. In actual fact, women did. They controlled the purse strings. They decided what was spent on what. They decided how much could be put away for rainy days and stuff like this. All the bloke did was went to work, come back home, ate his tea, and possibly went down the pub on a Saturday night and brag about how he's, how he rules the roost at home. So.
And then when you wrote the Amy Rowlands books, did you go into them writing them as cozies, or is that just how it turned out?
Sorry, I didn't get that last part of the question.
When you wrote the Amy Rowlands books, did you intend to write them as cozy mysteries, or is that just how it happened?
I like the Amy character. It was her character that sorted that out. She first appeared in the Unspoken book as just Alice's friend. She was she had a bit part in that. I honestly was fascinated. And in those books, I fell in love with Alice. I really did. And in all those books, she was a wonderful person, absolutely fantastic. I couldn't stop thinking about her, even when I was taking a break from in between books, sort of thing. I was thinking about what she might be up to back there on the farm with the bombs coming down and all the rest of it like this. So she's going on through the war years. But Amy, she was such an interesting character. And as soon as I wrote about her, and I just let her go and see what she wanted to do. And she came up with, she was such a feisty character. And when she spoke to men and ordering them about and whatever, and I thought, well, I can't just discard her. She's got to do something, and I was thinking of writing a sort of cozy crime because, like I say, a friend of mine, David W. Robertson, writes a lot of cozies. Those are modern day ones, and I've read them, and I don't do, because I don't really want to go into blood and gore and all, describing corpses and all the rest of it, or what somebody's done to a victim. I didn't need it. I didn't see it. So the cozy thing seemed the way to go. And then Amy just popped up there, and she didn't have to say anything to me. She was just there, and she was going to do it. She works in the sewing machine factory. Well, she works in a factory making garments every day, but she's way, way, way more than that. And although she didn't have, couldn't get into university for a start. No working class person ever went to university back then. So she's got brains. She's bright. She's feisty. She knows what she wants. And she's mad on Agatha Christie. She can work out movie plots before the killer's even sort of wiped his shoes on the way out of the door, sort of thing. Like, she knows who's done it, even the back of his head or whatever it is. She can work it all out. So, and she uses Poirot to use these techniques to try and help Bodkin with the investigations, and it works. And she is the one who cracks the cases all the time. It's not Bodkin just follows around really like a little lost lamb, just picking up the pieces where she's stormed through like a hurricane.
Bless him.
Mm-hmm.
Which character gave you most difficulty writing them?
I think it's probably Calvin from the Unspoken books, because I've seen what men like that do to women. I've seen what's happened to the women and the way their lives end up. because he's a narcissist, there's no two ways about it. And it was well hidden for the first 2 years of the relationship, and then suddenly it came out gradually. To tell her she can't wear perfume when she's going out on her own, even little things like this. He controls every aspect of Jessica's life. This is Alice's great-great-granddaughter. So I had to sort of learn a bit more about them, because I knew basically what a narcissist was, and to a degree how they acted, but you've got to get it right, you know. And it's all the little nuanced things that they do, things you wouldn't normally notice, that you do have to notice and put in there to bring the character, make the character alive. Because I had no experience in that myself, and I can't say I knew men like it, but there's lots of them, but they hide themselves away so well. And then when I did the research, I realised that the reason you don't know is because the only time you can pick them out is when the blame is always on their partner all the time. It's never ever, nothing's ever their fault, no matter what it is, no matter what they've done, it wasn't their fault. They were made to do it. And then I started to realise I did know people like that. So, and while I'm not one for using people I know as a character, I will use a trait or two that they have and sort of amalgamate them into to form the new character, sort of thing like that. So he was difficult. Frank, Alice's partner, first love interest, really, although it wasn't much of a love interest, it was the way things were. He was a little easier than Calvin, because, like I say, the attitude of men back then, I knew all about that from the 1950s. So you knew how sort of domineering they were. He wanted control of the farm, and Alice wasn't going to hand that over. And he became an abusive character. But with him, it was when he was in drink. With Calvin was just like that all the time anyway. I read one review where the lady said that you can't say they were really bad characters, they just made bad decisions. Now with Frank, that's right. Drink normally forced his hand, but with Calvin, that's a different matter. Although he couldn't change himself anyway, sort of thing, like, you know. But, he was a difficult character, right? And it's somebody I didn't like. And normally, even my baddies, I quite like writing about them, flawed characters especially. But with him, I didn't like him, and at the end, I was pleased about it, that I kept him in there, because I was going to change him a few times, and I didn't in the end. I just hated him all the way through. And it came across because everyone else hates him as well. So it did work.
Which of your characters would you most like to either go for a meal with or a boozy night out with?
Tracy, she'd drive me nuts. So probably Amy, I'm certain. Amy, I love Amy. She's it at the moment. When I'm writing about Alice, which I will do again, book 4 of the trilogy will happen. And when I get back into Alice, then I'll be in love with her again, sort of thing like that. But Amy will still be in those books. Still playing a bit part, but she will be an important part of those books. But I think Amy, she's it'll be like having Agatha Christie at the table, really, to be honest with you. You could ask her all sorts of things and she'd find an answer to everything. She's in the books, the unspoken books, and they sit around, they sit around listening to this 1938-39 radio program where a detective, there's a murder committed or a crime committed, and the detective gives you clues, and they have to sit around everyone. Then they go quiet for a while, play a bit of background music while everyone at home jots down all the clues and works out who did it, sort of thing. Like, and she's the one straight away, and she knows, she gets it right 100% every single time. Like, you know, she picks up the slightest things, so she would be great. Yeah, so I wouldn't mind sitting across her. Besides that, she's absolutely drop dead gorgeous as well, sort of thing, like, you know. But that's irrelevant, really. She is. Yeah, I do like her, and I like what she shows me, because I don't know these things before she tells me them. You know, I mean, I let her go, and she comes out with all these different wonderful ways of working things out with her. You know, I would never dream of. I couldn't sit there and think, and I don't think that. I just let her go. I'll give her the problem and see how she sorts it out, and she does. So.
Do you hide any secret jokes, messages, or Easter eggs in your books?
There is I'm laughing because one or two people who I know will be watching this afterwards, Paula and Sarah, they know who this is. I can't go into detail. I really can't. But I've tried to disguise them, and he's in the Tracy books. He isn't in the Unspoken books or anything like that. He is in the Tracy books, the newer ones. But I disguise him in different guises, basically different professions. He always looks the same, but and it's somebody who's annoyed me for years and years and years. And again, because this is going live, I'm not going into the reason or anything like that, but no, he is the most annoying person, and all he does is suck the life and the money out of people, you know what I mean? So he really is. That's how he is. And Paula and Sarah will know exactly what I'm talking about, and they'll sit there laughing when they're in this, because he appears 5 times in the last Tracy book as different characters. So but they'll know by each character, they will know who he is. They will know that because of a certain trait or something like that, they'll know that. But no, yes, so he is hopefully well hidden in that book.
Awesome. How do you choose your character names?
But like I think like most, I'll go back through. I'll Google them for female names. If I've got the year they were born, more or less, or how old they are, come 1939, or even for the dual timeline ones to not 2020, 21 now. So the younger characters in that, I'll Google someone around about 1990 for the best, most popular names, and then I'll skip the first 2 pages and just hopefully look around something unusual. And if I can't find anything unusual, then I'm back up now. I'll go with one of the common names. I mean, Alice, obviously, a common name. Amy is a common name. They aren't all A's, honestly. So, and Jessica was a popular name around about 1990. So I do, but I'm partway through writing a Gothic Victorian ghost story. It's called Sad Lisa, based on an old Cat Stevens song from the 1970s. And that was a bit more of a challenge, trying to find a name that probably would have been born around about 1870, sort of thing like that. You know? So that's, and, the Alberts and things like that. I wanted something a bit more unusual than that. And I do like unusual names, which is why you'll find out, well, Bodkin hasn't revealed his Christian name yet. And yet, which you'll understand when it does come out, either in the next book or the one, I think the one after, why he doesn't want it announced to the world. And that's an unusual name, and I did dig around. I really had to dig around for that one. But yeah, so I do the Google for the names lists, baby names, for certain years, and I'll choose them from there.
Have you given any of your series characters a quirk in the early books that you've later regretted?
I could say Tracy, the things that she gets up to, sort of thing, right? Being an airhead and all the rest of it, it's not looked on these days as it's not quite Tracy isn't PC at all. And I often look at her now and start thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have, and then I think, nah, just Tracy, it's staying in, it's all right. Like, she's always going to come out with these things and say these things, and no matter how if it upsets some people, it upsets some people. But Calvin is probably, again, Calvin, the way he is, the narcissist. But I didn't regret him. Like I told you, I almost nearly changed him. And if I'd have changed him, I would have to change everything, because he was in my head then. I would have to change everything from his name to the way he looked to every single thing about him, just so there was nothing of Calvin left. But then I wouldn't have had anything like as interesting a character. So, no, I don't regret. I regret killing someone off now, because she was such a fantastic character, and I could use this so much. I won't say about what I'm writing within the next few months. I've just realised a few wonderful situations where she could have, because she was like one of these anti-hero characters. She's not a very nice person, but to say the least. But she was funny with it, and the way the other characters bounced off her, it worked really well. And I decided to kill her off before the book was started, and then I did it. I stuck to it, and I did that. But I have regretted it, and I still regret it. And I think she should have had one more book at least with her in it. And I'm not mentioning the name because I'm hoping people want to read them. So.
Let's hope so. They should do. I will keep nagging anyway. It's fine.
Thank you. I'll keep on the
8th. Just a random question. When you were writing the Tracy books, were you chuckling to yourself?
Yeah, I still do. The last 2 Tracy books were written this year. And yeah, it's not that I don't know. You see, this is it. I don't think about a joke and then write it. That never ever happens. It's just I like the character go and see where she wants, with Tracy especially, see what she wants to do next. And hence, that's why I called it What Tracy Did Next. And it's just, she puts herself in these situations, and situations I couldn't be putting, because I'm the man, you know what I mean? It's just her. And she's always going to be doing this. And yeah, some of the responses that come back, especially her gran, some of the things that her gran says are outrageous. And I do, once I've typed it, and it's not until I've actually typed it out, or the thought is that I just, honestly, I can sit there and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. So hard that it's hard to type out the words. And then, yeah, I do laugh. I do. Even some of the little things in, the little nuanced things in there, the Amy books or Unspoken, a response to Bodkin or something, I'll type and just sit and laugh at what she's had to say. You know? But it honestly is the characters who are doing this. They drive everything for me. It's not, I'll just give them a situation, throw that open to them and see where they want to take it. You know, so.
Yeah, just Tracy's just so naive, like the driving lessons and the driving lesson outfit, and just, but she's, yeah.
Tracy came about. I never met her. I don't think there's anybody like Tracy alive. They won't be alive for that long. But she came about. My car was in dock for the week, so I had to get the bus to work. And I was all sitting near the back of the bus, and there used to be 5 girls sat on across the back of the road. They're all around about 18, 19 years old. They're all completely different characters, all of them. There was one of them who was just like Tracy, so naive. She just thought the best of everyone. She thought, you know, she couldn't see bad in anyone, no matter what they were doing or saying. There was one who was just mad about fashion, never spoke about anything else. And but with her, it was the high-end fashion sort of thing. With Tracy, I had to change that. So Tracy's Primark and Ali's Market store. And there was one in particular, and she was such a vindictive for a young girl, honestly. And she hated another girl who sat down the bus, about halfway down the bus, and she spat this vitriol all the way through on the journey, sort of thing. Like so. That became, so I amalgamated all these 5 women into one, into Tracy, and this is, you know, she hates Olivia. She's her nemesis. She really, really can't stand the woman, the tart as she calls her. And that all came from that girl on the back of the bus. The fashion came from there, the naivety came from there. So I don't know a Tracy. I don't think anyway I could never invent that character without those girls sitting on that bus, and I was with them all week, and I couldn't wait to get on. I used to run to the bus stop, urging the bus to come so I could get my seat, so I could be near them, so I could hear what it was on about today. And it was always different every day. Some of it was shocking, some of it was absolutely outrageous, honestly. But it was just, I had to bite my cheeks all the way through and put my hand in front of my mouth because it was just all so funny. And I didn't steal any of their situations, but they just gave me the sort of areas to aim at, sort of thing, you know.
And the nicknames as well. The nicknames were great. Oh God, some of them are just.
That's going to offend somebody, isn't
it? Yeah, it is mad that it's written by a guy, I must admit, because it's so nailed on to how women think. It's scary. Yeah,
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Like I said, my favourite quote of all. From any review I've ever had was Trevor writes like a girl, and once I read that, I thought, that's it, correct it, I'm all right here. Yeah. I used to worry about what women would think about it, you know. But in the Right Link groups, I was putting them all up as individual episodes. Each email would be another individual episode, sending them up every week. I got quite a following for it, and it was I realised there was most vocal ones were guys, I used to think, oh, that's just funny. Yeah, we all know a Tracy. Well, I'm sorry, you don't. We all don't know a Tracy sort of thing. You know, it's just. But and the women seemed to be quieter about it. But it was them who I got the best responses from at the end, like, you know, saying I'd got it right and what have you, which is all I needed to know. So yeah, and even now, I think 90% of the Tracy audience are women. Probably all, not all, lots of them 30s, 40s, 50s. Not so much teenagers, but I think they can all remember being in one of those situations that Tracy was in, or get themselves into a bit of trouble that way. So yes, yeah. No,
Yeah,
I love Tracy, I really do. But she's. I don't think anyone could spend more than about 20 minutes in her company.
no more than 10 with her gran.
yeah. I'm amazed I've got away with the gran, actually. But yeah, because people like her, so it's great. Although she comes out with these totally outrageous things, and people do like her.
Yeah, no, she's great. You said that your characters talk to you, but do you see the images of what you're writing and then write it down?
Yeah, it's like little film clips. A lot of it comes from, I'm sorry if I bored anybody else who's ever read an interview with me before, but a lot of it comes from that dimension you're in between sleep and wakefulness at night time. Is, you know, you've not quite dropped off yet, and you can hear the cat scrubbing around or whatever. That's when a lot of these things come to me, and I'm lucky in that they're still there the next morning. I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night reaching for a pen, thinking, oh, I've got to write that down, like, otherwise I'll forget it. They're all still there. A lot of the characters come from that space, and quite a few of the situations as well. And this is it. It's like you're dreaming, but you're not quite asleep. So you're seeing these moving images and what have you, and you see the place that these people are walking in, or the room that they're in, and things like this. And so, yeah, the next day, then I'll just set about it, and I'll have this picture in my head, and that's where they all sort of interact. It's like staging a play on the TV. I just see this, and they just, but the actual, what they say and what the actual, most of the actions come from the characters, how they would act, and that's the important thing. You can't suddenly change one of them who normally would have been placid into sort of an aggressive. So, you know, so as long as they stay within the realms of their character, they can do basically what they want, to be honest with you. And I'm surprised a lot of my books aren't sort of fantasy epic length of 1,000 pages or something, because I do have to sort of try and curtail them sometimes, say, no, stop, you know, you're going too far, save that for another book.
When you're editing, what's your most overused word or phrase?
No. Use it a lot. She didn't mind though. Yeah, though. But the worst thing is commas. I put them in all, and I find after years, I found out why I do it. My editors always get me onto me about commas. She spends most of the time removing commas from my work. And the way we work, it's a lot different to what the way most authors work. The only reason I came back into doing this again after a 5-year break was I was ill. I had an internal injury, and I got infected. I was in hospital for a week on a drip, and when I came out, I was facing 3 months off work with just the cat and daytime TV, and that would have driven me mad. So Maureen gave me a ring, and we had a chat. She said, "We should start writing again. That will, you know, give you something to do, fill the time." So we did that. And sorry, what was the question again? I've just taken myself way off track.
Commas. You were talking about commas.
Commas. Yeah. So she asked me after, because I send a chapter in, and then it comes back, and then while she's editing that one, I write another chapter and send that to her, and then that comes back. And that's the only way I could make it work, because when we decided on the book I was going to write, this dual timeline thing, we knew it's going to be quite a long one. And I've been not written a thing for 5 years, and everything else I'd done, even the Tracy books were quite short. The kids' books were only 30,000 words. To suddenly have to write one that's like 130, 140,000 words, it just looked like far too big a demand on me. I didn't know if I'd be able to do it. So she suggested, like, well, just write a chapter or two and send them to me, like, you know, stupid woman, because we're still doing the same thing now. Years on, like, you know, I mean, and I'm still doing that. So yeah, the commas, I'll put them in. I worked out that because I know commas don't belong in those places, you know what I mean? But I worked out what it is, and it's when I'm typing away, I'll suddenly get to a little bit and go, and then as I think, I hit a comma for a pause, and then carry on typing again. Like, it can be a split second thought, like, you know what I mean? I'm thinking what word to use. Oh, comma, and it's littered with them, absolutely littered with them. So yeah, but the word I use way too often is the though, for some strange reason. And I have to remove quite a lot of those.
Interesting, that's a different one. If you're able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend a day with?
Agatha Christie. I had a question the other day about a dinner party, and she was the first name I thought of. Such an interest. I mean, I could probably talk. I think I've seen very few interviews with her, you know, filmed one sort of thing, but I've read quite a bit. I've read her autobiography. I've been watching the Lucy Worsley thing on TV at the moment about Agatha. She would just liven any sort of thing. She is absolutely fantastic. I mean, wow. There was no one like it. There still isn't. You know, her knowledge on. I mean, I've got one of the books down there. The one, my reference books, The Poisons of Agatha Christie. She used so many of them, like, you know. So, and I delve into that even when I'm not going to be writing about poisons. I mean, Death of Lichgate was about poisons, but because it's just so interesting, the reasons that she used the particular ones, and she knew all about it from being a pharmacist herself, you know. She was fantastic. So I'd pick her brains for a few good ways to move people off, that's for certain.
And who would you most fanboy over meeting if you were to meet any authors that are still alive?
Until still alive. So I'd love to have met George Orwell. He's absolutely fantastic author. A lot of the books, and Frank McCourt, I think he's probably still alive. He wrote Angela's Ashes. That is absolutely terrific book. So a lot of the books I put down on my list here are all they're just as much as social commentaries as actual stories. Excuse me, Road to Wigan Pier and Angela's Ashes, Bradley Chalmers, Philanthropist. I still can't say that word. All those things are down there. But I'm just looking at my list here. Sebastian Faulks. I've just read Birdman. It's been on my Kindle for about 8 years, and I forgot it was there. And I suddenly came across it when I was scrolling through the day, and I've read that, and I just couldn't put it down. It was absolutely, the prose is absolutely out of this world. And unlike a lot of these Booker Prize things, who they get celebrated for the prose, the prose is actually just a series of thesaurus quotes, sort of thing like that. That's all they do. They sit there and go through it and write a bigger word, then one that might makes sense to him, but not to me. A lot of poets are like that as well. I'm sure they just sit there with thesaurus and put the thoughts down that way. He doesn't. His prose is absolutely outstanding. It's beautifully written. The characters are all flawed in one way or another. It's such a I don't know. It's just amazing. I just couldn't believe how well he'd written it for the subject matter. And you'd think it'd be a lot darker than that, and there is a lot of dark stuff in there, but it's the way he writes, and it really appeals to me. And I'm looking for a lot more of his books now. He's gone straight to the top of one of my favourite authors.
Yeah, I read that. Weirdly, after seeing it mentioned on QI, of all places, Alan Davis was talking about it, and even he said when he was talking about the whole audience was, you could hear a pin drop because they were so interested in what he was saying. So I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So I read it, and yeah, I agree with everything. It is amazing.
So I know about the tunnelers because I wrote an article about one of them from Nottingham for a magazine. Oh dear, I just went back a while now. Probably about 2014, 15, something like that. And he was an ex-miner who when they wanted him over there for this reason, tunneling under the enemy lines and setting charges off, sort of thing, like, you know, saying, but it must have been horrendous work, absolutely. Yeah, it didn't. And I used to work down the mines, so I know what it's like to be in the dark and what have you, and your battery's gone and you've got no light, your cap lamp's off, and you're on your own and you don't know which way you're facing or anything. But to actually be under all those tons of millions of tons of earth, in a sort of 2 foot high, 2 foot wide tunnel, digging his way through. Oh, and he just described, and he puts humour into it, and oh dear. But now I had tears in my eyes at times when he was holding one of the guys who were dying, and no, it's beautifully written, beautifully written book. I recommend that anybody out there, Birdman.
Yep, agreed.
Oh, Birdsong. I'm sorry, I'm calling it Birdman. It's Birdsong.
Birdsong, yeah. Okay, so who was your first celebrity crush?
I think it's probably Ray Davies from the Kinks. I remember being about 10. Now, I like the Beatles, and I like the Stones, and I liked all those groups. But him, I don't know. I think it's just the lyrics. And even now, I've still got a crush on him. I think he's absolutely fantastic. He's one of the best songwriters ever. Him and Leonard Cohen as well. First time I heard Leonard Cohen, I was a little bit older, probably 67, something like that. I was about 13 then. And he gave me the same feeling, exactly the same feeling. And yeah, I would quite happily, if there are limits, but I think I'd sit there at the bedside and chat away to them for, but both of them are fantastic lyricists, and that's something I will always like to have done, to be able to do. Write songs, so concise with it, but it has to mean such a lot. And I don't just mean the moon in June sort of stuff like Elton John does at times, sort of thing like it is like dedicated follower of fashion. You put that into a song. And Bob Dylan's another one. Bob Dylan can squeeze a whole paragraph into one line of a song, and I love it. So probably Bob Dylan came at the same time as Ray Davies, so you'd have to say one of those two. Oh, and then Maria Callas had a woman crush on her, and I've still got it. And she's dead, but I've still got
it. Favourite concert you've ever been to?
Hawkwind were wonderful back in 1971. They were fabulous. Dire Straits, I've been seeing them about 7 or 8 times. They were wonderful as well. Saw Pink Floyd once, they were wonderful. It's hard to say which was the best one of the lot. Probably one of the Dire Straits concerts at Birmingham. It was absolutely note perfect. Everything about it was a great night. That was. But just more recently, I've been going to see over the last just before I took Doreen about 6 months before she died. Went to the opera to see Madame Butterfly because I'd just gone to Maria Callas, and I didn't think I'd ever get into opera, and I knew Doreen wouldn't, but I bought a CD and played it, and I just kept playing it, sort of thing. Like, in the other room, I'd got a switch. I could switch from the hi-fi through to the back where I sat there writing, and she could hear it. So, and she got, this was quite nice. Can you put it on in here, like, So I did, and she got into it as well. So then we went to see the Opera North performing it, and sadly, that was the only one she ever saw. I've been to see 4 or 5 since, and saw La Traviata a few weeks ago, and I'm going to see Tosca next March when it comes, the Opera North again into Nottingham, and I love it absolutely. It's just a spectacle. It's absolutely fantastic. But as far as bands go, I'd probably have to say Dire Straits.
What are your biggest bugbears? Your pet hates?
Wokeism, political correctness. I'll stop there. Nothing comes close. It just irritates me and it annoys me so much. Every time, wherever I see it, I just know. The people get so offended so easily. But it's okay for them to offend other people by what they say. And that doesn't count, apparently. So, and I think 80%, 90% of the world think the same way as I do about these issues. Some people, I wouldn't dare go out and say the things I would have said a few years ago. I wouldn't want to say some of the things I used to say a few years ago. I will say that because that's just the way. It's a generational thing. It's what you grew up with. It's what was said and everything. Now, as I say, I learned on my own about women's issues and what have you, and I could never understand why doing the same job didn't get the same pay. I said, absolutely. My first job, there was a girl, they all started on the same day, and she got £1 a week less than me. And I just couldn't work out why, because she was far better at the job than I ever was. And, so I learned those things, and I learned from my mum, because my dad was great. He wasn't one of the nasty people sort of thing. He wasn't. But there still used to have the moment, the ding-dongs and what have you, like, when she felt she'd been put upon that little bit too much, and he'd come out with something silly, like saying, well, it's your job. And then That's your job. Oh dear. So yeah. But yeah, wokeism, political correctness, they're top of the list, and nothing comes any close to that.
So you said you've written some of the next Amy Rowlings, and you're thinking of doing book 4 of your trilogy. Do you know, or do you have any more plans for the future?
I do. I'd like Amy to. I know what happens in. I could squeeze it in this bit into book 3 of the Amy Rowling's books, but I'd like to get a 4th one before I do this. You'll understand when you read it. I'll tell you off air or whatever it is. But so it's whether I can squeeze it into this book or not, because I've got a different ending planned for it. So there'll probably be a 4th Amy book. It is up there. There's a couple of things. One like an anniversary murder. Somebody's reading newspapers and stealing particular dates that have been someone's wedding anniversary, and depending which anniversary it is, that's how they killed. Like, someone's paper stuffed in the mouth, or one's been hit by a lump of wood. Whichever anniversary of that particular one they celebrated, that's how they died, sort of thing. Like, now it's probably been done before, but I've not really done the research onto it, so I'll have to tweak that. There's another one called The Model Murders, or A Model Murder. I'm sorry, I've changed the title of it. That's Amy. She had a photograph taken in Hopes and Fears by this local photographer who wanted to enter into a competition in London, a national competition, because she's so photogenic, and he does. And she actually gets into the top 10, so she has to go to London to this event, and it's going to be announced on the night. Well, one of the other models is bumped off, and she's there, and Bodkins accompanying her just so she's got something, and so they're going to have to try and work out who did that. So that's that sort of plan. That's going to come up. The new Amy one I have to finish on the 8th or whatever date you decide to just repeatedly send me that. Get on with it. There's Sad Lisa, Victorian ghost story. I'm 4 or 5 chapters into that. It's only going to be a novella. So because I'm 12,000 words in, there's probably only about 20 to go, to maybe 25. So, and I really do want to finish that, but it's I don't know, it just keeps getting put to the bottom of my priority list for some reason. Like, and it started out really well. Maureen loves it, the editor, so, and she really wants me to do more of that sort of thing. It's a bit darker. Book 4. What happens after? I'll tell you off. And again, what happened after certain characters sort of did something, or that has to be told. I've been told that already. I get quite a lot of messages about that when you want to know what happens to Jessica and Marjorie and Alice back in the war, because she's still there. Jessica's still reading the diaries from the attic and finding out what Alice did. And she's up to 1942 now, so she's still got a few years to go yet before the end of the war. So they're the things, and I'm also thinking about, and I think about more and more, basing a book on the town where I live. It's an industrial town in Derbyshire called Ilkeston, and we used to have an enormous ironworks and coke ovens, and our street, Compton Street, was right in the middle. So all we got all the time was fumes coming that way, chemicals all over, and it was, everyone grew up with bad chests and what have you, like, you know what I mean? But it was a fantastic childhood. But some of the characters that lived with us on that street, because nobody had anything, nobody had 2 pence stuck together. It was a struggle. Coming up, the houses were damp and there were rats, and it wasn't that wonderful. But some of those characters have stayed with me. I can still remember them, especially the women. Women were so strong. I mean, the guys went to work, and like I say, it was the women who had to deal with everything, no matter what had happened during that time. They had to deal with the missing the rent. They had to deal with the rent man who was coming around. They had to deal with absolutely everything. And some of those, they were so strong. They really were, and they would do anything. They would throw themselves under a bus for any member of their family. Like, they really were that strong. They'd fight. I've seen them do it. They'd fight somebody for it, and it was. And I can remember hearing the pubs tipping out. It used to be 10 o'clock at night, I think that's all it was back then. And looking out the bedroom window up the road towards the pub, because it was only just over there, and then fighting, like, something like, and yet next morning they'd all go to work together, like, nodding to each other and discussing this and the other. Some of those characters are fantastic, and I really would like to write a book based on 1950s Ilkeston, although I wouldn't be able to call it that. I'd have to change the characters, quite a lot about the characters, but because you don't want people coming to saying you're writing about me, because I wouldn't do it. I never ever use a person to, like I say, I use a tiny little bit of something from each of them and amalgamate them into another character. But I'd like to do that, and that's something I've thought about doing probably since I was in my 20s, I think, you know. So when I left Ilkeston at 16, 17, I moved back again about 5 years ago. And all the time I was away, this place never leaves you, you know, it stays with you. It's like a magnet, just it's pulling you all the time. And I love it here. The characters have not changed. It's still the same sort of people. They work hard, they play hard. They'll have a big row one night, yet they'll be fine the next day. Everything's great about it. It's working class people who I grew up with. And they've made me what I am. They've formed my character, basically, between them, all of them. They got their morals, their standards, is what I look at now, and that's how I see life as well. So I'd like to write a book about that. I'd have to disguise it heavily.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions for you, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell us.
Now the thing, I haven't got a lot to tell them. Just Mia's been very good. She's still sleeping. She's normally on the back of the chair by now, but she's been very good. And so is Trixie. See, she's not bothered to.
Yeah, she came and said hello, and then she's buggered off. So, do you have your books to hand to show off?
I want the book. I have a few.
Ooh.
I've just told them one at a time. I can move my notes now. I don't need those anymore. But these wonderful covers, I don't know if you can see it. Is that it? That's fine. Wonderful covers were designed by Nikki East from Spellbound Books. And they're absolutely out of this world. I've just got a permission. I've made some bookmarks and some postcards using the image from the front of that. So, and they'll be coming quite soon. And I'd like to thank also Zoe O'Farrell for these wonderful Tracy's Hotmail. They've all been revamped with new covers, and Zoe O'Farrell designed them. So, and there's a fourth Tracy book coming out. Zoe's working on the cover now. Tracy's 20s Hotmail, and that'll hopefully be coming out before the end of the year. So that's my big plug for that one.
And if anyone would like to find out more about you, where can they do so?
My website, I've got two, trevorbelshaw.com and blog.trevorbelshaw.com, where I've only got about half a dozen book reviews on there, but that's what I'm going to turn into a book review site, my own book review site. I'm not going to join the blog tours or anything like that. It's just individual particular books, like Birdsong. I've done a short review for that one and put it on the website. So yeah, they're the main places. T.A. Belshaw at Twitter. No one will remember all these things, but and my own name, T.A. Belshaw, author on Facebook. So
brilliant. Well, that's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.